everyone. My name is Dr. Kara Van Dam, and I'm the Dean of the School of Arts and Sciences at University of Maryland Global Campus. And I'm so pleased that you're joining us for our latest installment of our Navigating the Future webinar series. And today we turn our attention to supply chain, and we ask the burning question, where did all the toilet paper go? I'm so pleased today to be joined by Dr. Jim Bryant, who is the Program Director of our Acquisitions and Supply Chain Programs. Dr. Bryant has an impressive background. He has served as the Chief Engineer for Leidos and Lockheed Martin, as well as the state of South Carolina's Chief Information Officer. He has held senior leadership positions at a number of other organizations and had a distinguished and lengthy career with the U.S. Air Force. He holds a PhD in environmental engineering from the Union Institute and University, and 3 master's degrees in national security, computer information systems, and management, respectively. Jim, welcome. I'm excited about this conversation. So let's start with that first question. Where did all the toilet paper go?
Good morning, Kara. Thank you for having me today. All the toilet paper went to consumers that were hoarding it or panic buying the toilet paper. When the COVID-19 started, people were concerned with being able to buy what were normally consumable products on a consistent basis. What you got was hoarding of the toilet paper, and as I said, panic buying. So people reached out to as many retailers as they could and bought the toilet paper. So this presented a problem in the supply chain, what we call a bullwhip effect, where products are hoarded and what is normally a consistent, replenishable supply of a product got decimated very quickly from the hoarding and the panic buying. So that's what happened to the toilet paper, Kara.
Thank you, Jim. And it was interesting to see the other shortages, laptops, rescue dogs, milk, meat, and I know they all sort of had different breakdowns in that supply chain. So when we think about COVID-19 and it's sort of the dramatic scale of its impact, those in your field of supply chain management spend a great deal of time thinking about risks and devising strategies to mitigate those risks and avoid some of what we have seen during this pandemic. Can you talk to us a bit about the concept of supply chain risk management?
Yes, and going back, what you said as far as the other consumables, you were spot on as far as people trying to hoard those as well. Anything that's a consumable that people are scared of losing, they'll try and hoard. Risk is at the forefront of supply chain management. So everything we do is about measuring risk and putting a mitigation strategy in place to stop it. You can look at the supply chain as starting with raw materials to manufacturing, production, delivery to retailers through warehouses or cross docking at warehouses and to retailers and then finally to consumers. So each step along that supply chain has a potential for risk, be it a failure in transportation, be it a failure in storage, anything like that. So what we do is develop metrics for measuring extensively in the supply chain. When I was in the military, we have what we call a how goes it meeting. So once a month, we measured how well we were doing with risk management. And from the maintenance of vehicles to the maintenance of our facilities, as I mentioned, the raw materials going to manufacturing, the production lines, everything we measured for risk. And what we would do is when we exceeded a metric, when we didn't meet a metric, what we would do is, like I said, put a mitigation strategy in place to correct it quickly. So that's how we measured risk, and that's how we repaired it, if you would. And continued on in the supply chain.
Thank you. So I'm a native Michigander, and when I was growing up in Michigan, obviously the automobile industry was a very large employer in the state. Any of the big three, and everyone in the state knew multiple people who either worked directly in the automobile industry or for the suppliers, to speak of sort of the supply chain effect. And in the 80s and 90s, there was a real push towards enhanced automation, and that resulted obviously in the loss of jobs, which was an issue in the economy at the time in Michigan. Um, it does seem like the pandemic has the potential to speed up additional automation, but maybe for a different reason. You know, we've seen numerous manufacturers have to close down plants intermittently because of outbreaks. And if you have more automation, you have potentially fewer workers on the manufacturing floor, and then fewer closures because, well, bluntly, robots don't get sick, right? So I'm just wondering, what is the future that you see? Obviously, the question of the loss of jobs is a serious and significant one, but thinking specifically about future supply chain management, what trends do you see on the horizon?
That's a great question. Thank you for asking it. Going back to your example with the automation, you're spot on as far as basically, and I lived during that time in the Air Force, and we too, for the same reasons, automated things. Material handling system we got automated in the warehouse, so they could, go and pick the products and bring it forward. So what happened then was the middle layer of management of people, to your point, got taken out and repurposed in another industry or another function. What I believe will happen today, the trend is this, and you're going to smile when you hear this, is social distancing. Okay. I believe that technologies will allow us with artificial intelligence and also robotic process automation to have folks that are working, manually hands-on with products to step back and automate their processes through robotic, which is really software. Okay, it's a fancy term for software, where we identify the steps that the machine or machines are supposed to take, and then they perform it. But the point is that people will have a distance between themselves and the products. So we will be able to effectively deliver the products actually faster and more efficiently. Okay, and people keep their jobs. They are just rehomed to performing different type of work, higher value task, meaning a higher level supervisory task where they're managing the digital workers, if you would, in the supply chain and moving products from, again, the raw materials to manufacturing, production, retailers to consumers. So hopefully, this will keep a pulse future situations where we have, as I mentioned earlier, hoarding and panic buying of any consumable product, and be able to respond faster and reduce the risk to the product being, out. So that's my answer.
I think that's great. I mean, really, it speaks to a safer and smarter workplace, and certainly in manufacturing. And I also really like that point about the upskilling. I think as higher education providers, we think a lot about that and the upskilling. So hopefully we are part of that solution as well. Well, Jim, I just want to thank you. This was a really interesting conversation. I promise I won't run out and buy more toilet paper. I think we're good. But thank you so much for joining us today. And I hope that you all turn in for our next webinar in this series, where we're actually going to talk about COVID and the holidays, and sort of the psychology of our separation there. So thank you so much, Jim. I hope you have a great day, and thank you, everybody out there.
Thank you so much. Have a nice day.